What's up, guys? I'm going to re-go through this video and make notes as we go. Let's get started.
Have you ever studied for a test by reading your notes, and then when you got your test back, you were confused as to why you got a bad grade? Turns out there's a significant difference between reading and studying.
Fancy. So what is it?
When you read something, your goal is to kind of get just a general understanding of the content that you're reading, whereas studying is focused on recalling that information, pulling it back.
So in other words, the difference between reading and studying is fluency versus mastery. So I'm going to pull this slide up over here. I'm going to showcase the difference over here. All right. So when we read something, we're building what's known as fluency, according to Urban Ebbinghaus over here. Fluency means you remember it happening, but you don't necessarily have recall of it. Or I asked you the question, you're like, oh, I remember I was doing that, but I can't tell you what it is. Where mastery is being able to retrieve information from memory. When you read books or you read your notes, you build fluency that helps you remember that you did it. But when you test yourself, that builds mastery. So you need to build that mastery by testing yourself, while fluency is built by reading or watching a video and understanding it, which is often why you'll watch a whole video, get really fluent in it, and then a week later you've forgotten it all because you didn't test yourself on it because you don't have mastery over it. So reading builds fluency, testing builds mastery, and you must understand the information and have that fluency to build mastery. But how do we build that fluency? Well, let's keep going with the video.
So when you read your notes, you're not going to be able to recall that information because you're not applying the right strategies. And we're going to go over some of those strategies in a little bit. But before that, I want to talk about the importance of reading or studying with a goal or purpose in mind. Here's an example to prove it. Let's pretend that you were a bus driver and you put the keys in the ignition and you drive off and you go, and at the bus stop, you start by picking 5 people up on the bus. And those 5 people go with you to the second stop, and on the second stop, you pick up 3 men, and 2 of the people on the bus leave. Then you go to the next stop, and then an old elderly man with a cane starts walking up there, and then behind him is a guy with a bicycle who can't quite get it onto the bus, and eventually ends up and goes and leaves. And at the next stop, a pair of twins come on the bus, and 1 person gets off the bus. Then you go to the final station, and everyone gets off the bus. So I have 2 questions for you guys about the story. Question number 1 is, how old is the bus driver?
Did I get you?
And question number 2 is, how many stops did the bus make? Now, if you're rolling your eyes right now and you're looking at me funny, probably I got you. And the reason is because you didn't preview what information you'd be looking for.
You didn't know what question you were going to be asked. You were just listening to the story, not knowing what piece of information was important.
Story. In other words, you didn't have a purpose or goal to your studying or reading into this story. With that purpose or goal, you would have known what to look for.
Like if before we started, I had this on the board and I was like, guys, you're going to be watching this video. While watching this video, make sure you pay attention to when I ask the question, how old's the bus driver? Because I said you are the bus driver, and however old you are is the answer. And if you knew to look for it,
you wouldn't have been ready to answer the question. So the purpose of looking for information is super important when studying and when reading. So the answer to the riddle is that I said that you were the bus driver. So in my case, that would have been, I'm 28 years old. However,
29, 30 now.
And there were 5 stops. So if you were ready to look for that information, you would have been able to achieve it. So how do you prepare your brains?
Good job, 2 years younger, Mr. Steckler. Keep it up.
Be ready to take in new information when you study. Well, you don't want information to be brand new when you're reading it, so you need to preview the information. And I'm going to walk you guys through a strategy to do just that. So to make information stick in your brain, the first thing you do is you're going to flip through every page, and you're looking to see what is on every single page. You're seeing how long the chapter is, how many words compared to images. Does anything stand out to you?
A good way to apply that in one of our lessons, especially in the OneNote, is before you start, go to the top, slowly scroll through everything. Read the questions that you're going to be answering before you get started. Check out how many videos there are. Look for if there are any particular things. Okay, we've got an image here, the video you're currently watching. Scroll through everything. This is exactly how you apply that.
It can be done on a book, a textbook, or even in a YouTube video. You might scroll down to the comments to see what some of the information is before watching the video, so you have enough context so you can then take in that new information.
Always.
This is going to be your first of 4.
Super important also to do that now that the dislike button is gone. So you want to see what people say in the comments because you can't see that.
Repeats of this information to help that repetition make it stickier in your brain. And then you're going to go to the end of the chapter and you're going to look for the quiz or what questions are being asked at the end.
Like, what do you need to know by the end of this? And sometimes that will be told in your objective at the beginning of a lesson. So be careful to pay attention to like what the objective is, because that's basically what you're going to be tested on.
And by doing this, you're going to know what to look for, what the author of the chapter thought was so important to be gained. In other words, you're reading with a focused attention. So then, now that you know what you're looking for, you're going to...
Reading with a focused attention. If you ever find yourself reading and drifting off, it's because you don't have something to look for. So make sure you know what you're looking for before you answer a question. Don't just read all of this article over here and then read the questions and be like, I don't remember them. Make sure that you read these 4 questions and then now you're specifically looking for the answer while you're reading. It's much more effective.
We're going to go to the beginning of the chapter and read all of the bold prints, basically the stuff they want you to see. And this is how they broke down the information for you. Then you're going to go back.
And I do that exact same too. When I think there's a word that's important, I always make sure that I bold it to show you that it is more important. That's called contrast of size.
To the beginning of the chapter, and you're going to read the first and last sentence. You're not reading this for comprehension. You're simply reading this for exposure.
So you know what to look for.
So you're not going to understand the full chapter yet because all you have are these dots of information. And these dots are your map, which is going to help you read all the information. And you're going to connect the dots. Those dots are the preview of the coming attractions of all the information.
And sometimes when you're disconnected from class, you may have been absent the day before, and you have like 2 dots of information. There's something missing in the middle, and you can't link them together. So because of that missing information, you can no longer follow what's happening. So it's really important to have that overview. So even if you miss a day, you're like, oh, I need to go review that math topic that I missed the day I was out.
And now that you have all those pieces of information, you can now go through and read it only one time. So the formula is a lot of work, but it's not a lot of work compared to going back and doing it again and again and again. And when you're trying to cram for a test and you're hoping and praying over here that it's going to stay in your head, it may not. But the proved method to make it stay, the systematic approach, is using repetition. Repetition is the core of learning. And by giving yourself multiple repeats with a quick overview, what the author thought was the most important stuff, the bold print in the first and last sentence, you're giving your reticular activating system, your internal radar, multiple repeats of that information.
So those repeats of the information right there, those 4 steps over here is what I'm looking for in the OneNote. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So over here for the question, I'm just giving you a good heads up that it's asking why is it important to study things multiple times? Well, how do you prepare your brain to take in new information? Include step-by-step method. This is that step-by-step method, so make sure you include those 4 parts in your answer over here. Also, your reticular activating system is in your brainstem over here. It's right at the back of your skull. And when something happens that's out of the ordinary, like I yell at you, all of a sudden, that's going to make everything start standing out because you're not used to it happening over there. It's what filters out information, or it lets you focus on particular things. Like if I all of a sudden got thrown someone hit in the face, you'd be like, what's going on over here? That's your reticular activating system we'll talk more about in class.